Hi, I'm Kelvin Gee, Senior Director of Modern Marketing Business Transformation at Oracle. And if you want to find out why you should write a capital E on your forehead, watch this episode of Break Free.
Welcome to Break Free with TopRank Marketing. I'm Joshua Knight, and I'm here today with Kelvin Gee. He is the Senior Director of Modern Marketing Business Transformation at Oracle. Kelvin, welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, stalking as we do before we do an interview like this. Just the bare bullet points of what you have been doing over there at Oracle I found were fascinating. So I have to ask you to expand on those as much as you are willing and able to in our time together. I mean, first of all, I think you implemented a modern marketing program there at Oracle. What does modern marketing mean to you?
Well, that's a great question. And I think the definition of modern marketing changes depending on which era we are in, right? So before it was around, traditional marketing was around, doing traditional marketing, and modern marketing is really kind of doing more things digitally, nurture campaigns, social media, things like that. Modern marketing today, I think, is more about account-based, or ABM, as it were. And so my focus primarily is upskilling our marketers internally at Oracle on how to do account-based really, really well.
So with account-based marketing, you're talking about targeting a small number of companies or targeting at scale with that personalized approach?
Yeah, it's really every layer of the pyramid. Account-based is the most intense at the top of the pyramid, where there are large key accounts, but we believe in account-based at scale, and that you can ladder down that pyramid and focus on even the small mom and pop businesses.
Do you think it's something that can be really across enterprise, across verticals, across industries?
We do, yeah. You can do it by verticals, you can use by use case, you can do it based on intent search topics. I think you can slice and dice that pyramid a number of different ways.
Do you feel like as we adapt some of these new practices that there are some things that we should just be letting go of at this stage?
You know, I used to think that, actually. It's a great question. I used to think that the future of B2B marketing was account-based. I'm kind of backpedaling a little bit more because now I talk to more companies. I realize that a large part of their businesses still rests on traditional marketing or digital marketing, and they can't pivot to a 100% account-based model. However, I do see that there's a hybrid approach, a combination where both funnels need to coexist. And I think that's kind of the next evolution or maturation of account-based, is how those companies manage those books and report back on those two types of go-to-market strategies.
Do you think that then needs two teams with the specialties, or do you think it's more aligning the entire marketing department around those two funnels?
Now, that's a great question. It could be done in a number of different ways. Generally speaking, it's two different teams, where account-based is more in the field marketing realm, whereas the digital marketing teams are handled in the corporate area. But I've seen hybrids of both.
So when you're talking about really getting a new philosophy of marketing and pushing it out to a team or even through an organization, how do you start with that change management?
That's the $20,000 question. Yeah, you first have to evangelize the concept. It's like flying cars, right? You have to introduce the concept slowly and convince people that they need flying cars. Same thing with account-based. And generally speaking, if something makes sense, it's super logical, you're gonna get more adoption and buy-in. Account-based makes a ton of sense, right? The fact that companies need to be more customer-centric, deliver better customer experience, personalize the content, align with sales, measure themselves differently. You know, those are all legitimate reasons and challenges today, and that's really what account-based solves. I call account-based kind of like the strategic glue that pulls all that stuff together. And so when you rationalize account-based along those terms, it seems too logical to ignore. And so you start by evangelizing using logical reasoning, and then you hope you get buy-in, some hand raisers who want to try it out and pilot it. You help evangelize and empower them with training, tools, templates, maybe some technology. And then you hold their hands and you make them successful. And then when they are, you're going to see other hand raisers come up and say, hey, give me some of that. And that's how you start a revolution.
So you start that ball rolling, and you get the buy-in slowly and build. So definitely a small pilot program, not a jump in.
Absolutely. Crawl, walk, run, yeah.
Who should be leading that charge then?
I always encourage organizations to have someone who wakes up in the morning thinking nothing other than account-based and how to execute and get that moving. And that person can live in corporate, they could live in the field, it doesn't really matter where they live in the organization, but you need a leader who focuses on account base.
So more even than like, well, you have to get this particular executive on board. You think it really is having that champion?
You do, yeah. You need an internal champion to evangelize, because that never stops. Because once you convince one executive, you got another executive who just comes in and maybe they have a different perception of what account base is. And by the way, that's normal to have like 23 and a half definitions within any organization on what an account based strategy is. So you have to standardize on that and then evangelize and train and then enable. So that's all part of the job description.
We got to get it into like buzzword carry. We got strategize, evangelize, actualize. We need another eyes in there.
So our framework at Oracle is you need to target the right accounts. So it's kind of like traditional demand gen, right? If you got the best winning creative, but you're targeting janitors, it doesn't matter. So same thing with account-based, you got to target the right accounts for the program to be successful. And we'd like to take a data-driven approach, obviously, but targeting the right accounts is the first step. Personalization is the second step. And if you don't personalize the content, then what's the point of account-based? That's kind of what traditional demand gen is all about. So understanding something about your key target accounts is the key to success and being able to personalize that. The third step is orchestration. Account-based is a team sport, sales and marketing, sometimes customer success as well. It's product marketing, right? It's everybody all in. Orchestrating what the right hand is doing versus the left hand between sales and marketing is really important. And then finally, the measurement piece is you got to measure your account-based programs differently. If you measure it using traditional MQL standard way, your numbers might actually look worse, not better. So you definitely need a different yardstick when you measure account base.
What kind of metrics are you looking at?
We actually look at account engagement as an early indicator on whether your program is performing or not, because if you're not seeing an increase in engagement from a snapshot of you might have taken before the campaign starts, probably means it's not working. Either the personalization isn't there, the tactics aren't working, you're not at the right watering holes. So it could be a number of those factors. The orchestration may not be right. So that's the early indicator of whether it's working or not. Once you're past engagement, what truly matters to sales, of course, is conversations. They want conversations with these target accounts. And so that's what we really look at. And that's really measured by target account pipeline, or TAP we call it. But when you look at growth in that pipeline, regardless of credit, or of who sources that pipeline, whether it's marketing or sales, we don't care because it's a team sport. And you can see that growth. And you compare that with a snapshot you've taken of that pipeline of those target accounts before the campaign begins, you will see success. And that's how you measure those programs by.
Speaking of like sales and marketing alignment, it's a huge topic. You know, there's plenty of digital ink has been spilled about it.
Yeah.
There does seem to be this rivalry. I talk about how marketers are kind of the nerds at the table and the sales are more the jocks, and we're both very good at different things.
Yeah.
You know, I can't throw a football and maybe I can't write a blog post, you know. But how did you encounter that at Oracle, and then how did you get past that?
No, of course not. We never heard of such a thing.
Oh, of course.
No.
Why would I even suggest it?
It's foreign concept to me. No, of course, it's the holy grail, right? It's sales and marketing alignment's been around since I think when the Earth started to cool, I believe, and that's still the means towards an end. And account base is supposed to be the strategy that helps pull those two functions together. And I think it's definitely a better strategy than say like traditional demand gen, because you focus on the top of the funnel on the same set of target accounts. So if you can lock arms on the same accounts that sales cares about, whether it's Airbnb, Apple, Disney, whatever, and lock arms on those, it doesn't matter. You don't have to do that hand fighting with sales at the bottom of the funnel in terms of, hey, how come you're not following up on my MQLs? Because you've already aligned at the top. That's the beauty of account-based. At the end of the day, you still see ABM pilots fail, largely because you still haven't aligned with sales at the end of the day, right? And so Sometimes companies have to reboot their ABM programs, call it something different because ABM has a bad name because of the false starts.
Yeah.
So I've seen that and heard that a lot, and that's kind of normal because that's what pilots are for. You learn from those, and then hopefully you don't give up. You just kind of rename it, fix some of the things that went wrong, maybe realign on the right accounts, and then we start over.
Do you feel like there's a need to almost redefine success in a way for marketing and sales to get them aligned, because there's kind of an infighting over who gets the credit for a sale, and the sales has their compensation structures tied to it, marketing has their budget tied to it?
Yeah, I talk about this somewhat passionately. I rue the day that marketing gets off this treadmill of volume, more MQLs, the better. And I also rue the day that credit, that term credit, or contribution or source, those terms disappear from our lexicon. I believe that pipeline growth is what the organization cares about, what the CEO cares about, and then revenue growth either way is really what matters the most. And it doesn't really matter where their credit comes from. Everyone knows that, whether you buy a car, you buy it for a number of reasons, right? It's the websites, the Super Bowl commercial, maybe a brochure, maybe a visit to the dealership. Same thing when you lose weight, right? Is it that last workout at the gym or all the other gym visits the last 12 months? And the inverse is true. All the weight that I've gained, was it from that last donut I ate or all the other donuts I've eaten in the last 12 months? So why are we trying to portion credit in B2B, sales and marketing? It's just kind of ridiculous to me.
If you see a blog post on the TopRank blog that talks about attribution with a weight loss model, you should know that I was thinking about that way before we sat down.
Okay.
No, I would give you credit, because even though credit's not
I'm sure it's been used before. It's just appropriate, right?
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Do you think, though, that organizationally then, should sales and marketing be under the same management? Should they be under the same roof?
No, I don't think so. I think there's still different muscles, and there's sales and there's marketing for different reasons. There's different personalities, there's different specialties. So I don't see a convergence of those two. I do see marketing adding a lot of value to the organization other than just demand gen, right? Brand and awareness. I think that has, marketing plays a huge role there. And it's a different muscle. So I do think they need to be separate.
Maybe under like Department of Revenue banner.
You're starting to see that, especially on the operations side, where sales, marketing operations start to converge into a revenue ops. You can see both functions, sales and marketing, rolling up under a chief revenue officer. You're starting to see that. But again, they're still separate organizations, maybe under one head, but still separate organizations.
So getting around a table every now and again.
Yeah.
And making sure that communication stays open.
The lack of communication is the problem with most challenges in organizations. Just put it that way.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, I have a question here about what mistakes do you see in the industry? I feel like we should phrase that as what opportunities do you see in the industry for people who are maybe not quite getting the results that they're looking for?
I think a lot of it is making sure you have the right strategy for your organization, understanding why you chose a particular go-to-market strategy. Sometimes people think they want to do account-based, but for all the wrong reasons, right? Typically, if you're a small, medium-sized organization, it's for growth organization, where traditional demand gen isn't delivering that required growth. Right? After all, there's only so much inbound can do, and you can't control the quality of inbound sometimes. So that's really where outbound comes into play, and then account-based is definitely a better way of doing outbound. But if you're in an enterprise organization, maybe it's pipeline acceleration, maybe it's increasing wallet share, your key accounts. So just understanding what your strategy is and choosing the go-to-market for the right strategy.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're thinking ABM is something that pretty much everyone should have at least a little bit of an eye on, regardless of...
I do, and I think Serious Decisions had a stat that 93% of most organizations are starting to do some kind of account-based or ABM, which is great. Not many are killing it, though. So that's the problem. They start pilots, hopefully they learn from it, and then they have to relaunch and learn from the mistakes. That's just a natural maturation.
And that's marketing, A/B testing, optimizing.
Yeah, I think, as far as ABM, I think we're still in the second, third, maybe fourth inning, but we still have a ways to go.
It seems like it is almost more recently even than content marketing. It's become a discipline only fairly recently.
Yeah.
Maybe in the past decade even, do you think?
What's different today is the data, right? The data makes ABM more interesting because now you have all this other external data in addition to your first party data that makes account base a lot more interesting. And then you've got technology like orchestration and account based platforms that makes things a little bit easier to execute at scale.
That reminds me, I was going to ask, I know that Oracle is your data corporation. You live and die by data.
Yes.
Can you give me a little peek into what your tech stack looks like in a generalized way?
I'll give you some broad strokes, but obviously we drink our own champagne, right? So Eloqua is obviously our marketing automation platform, and our analytics engine is all on Oracle Analytics. But the important thing to understand is we believe that data is the future of B2B marketing. Because we're not going to have less data, we'll probably have more data in the future. And so if you believe that, and you also believe that most organizations, especially enterprise organizations, have data silos, and if the goal is to deliver a better customer experience, you got to break down those data silos. So I always use the Marie Kondo analogy, right? Where she goes into your house and then she tells you to pile all your clothes from all your different closets onto your bed, right? And she tells you that for a reason, because only if you do that, you see all the piled clothes on your bed, does the light bulb go off and you say, oh my God, I got a lot of clothes. It's the same thing with your data, right? Once you consolidate all your data silos onto one bed, so to speak, bed, in this case, a customer intelligence platform or customer data platform or whatever you want to call it, data lake of some sort. Once you combine all that data, that's when you start to see all the insights of your customers. And for us, we think the future of B2B resides in a data lake of some sort. And that data lake is your single source of truth. And when an account surges or rises, it'll rise simultaneously in your marketing automation platform and or your CRM. And so that's really the important construct that we think is going to be more representative of a better customer experience in the future.
And it is too, as we get that more and more data. I like your Marie Kondo example because it is finding the data that sparks joy.
Absolutely.
The data that is useful for your marketing purposes. Do you have any tips for getting at the data that matters and not just drowning in this data lake?
The great thing is that we, in addition to the growth of data, we also see the advancements in AI and machine learning. And we think that as the technology matures, you're going to have AI do all the heavy lifting for you in terms of identifying those surges so that it's not a human drowning in data trying to figure out, oh, XYZ account is now ready to talk. We believe that the machines will do all the heavy lifting for us, and they will automatically bring to our attention the accounts that are spiking.
So you've got your robotic submersible in your data lake that is identifying those patterns.
Correct.
Take me like 5 years into the future of marketing. What does it look like? What do you think?
We also believe the future of B2B marketing is an always-on future. So if you believe in the customer life cycle is represented as an infinity loop, right, where one side is the buyer's journey and the other side of that loop is the owner's side, we believe that in always-on, on-demand digital marketing experiences driven by AI, which is informed by data, obviously, is that future. So marketers don't have to kind of lick their finger, hold it up in the wind and say, ooh, I think my customer is ready for an infographic, or they're ready for this webcast. I think technology will be advanced where the robots, the machines will recommend the right tactic at the right time with the right content.
Do you feel like in that always-on world that we're moving away from the big campaign and more into that sustained drumbeat?
I do. I think the notion of a campaign will probably disappear because it'll always be on. Now, yes, you'll probably need to update your content and your messaging as you pivot, and your themes of your campaign needs to be refreshed. But as a whole, the notion of a campaign is a little silly in my opinion. It's a marketing construct. It's not a customer construct. It's not a customer wakes up, it's like, oh, I think so-and-so company needs to deliver a campaign to me, right? So I think it's as long as companies are attentive to their customers' needs and interests and their challenges and what keeps them up at night, and still delivering that content in a creative way, but it's all delivered in the right watering holes and in the channels. I think that's really what matters.
Oh yeah, I think the data gives us the direction and shows us where to go, and then the creative is how we actually make that connection with people. As a creative, I have to believe that I still have a role in marketing.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one area that probably the bots won't take over necessarily, or at least maybe not till much later, is that creativity, right? Because data will tell us where the customers are in the journey, what channels that they're on, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. But we still need to deliver the content in a creative way that's memorable.
Chris Penn, I think it was 2 years ago now, I have to keep track of when, because he told me, I asked him after his presentation, I said, I'm a little terrified about all this automation and AI coming to take our jobs. How long until we have a bot that can write content like a person? He said 5 years. Well, and that's 3 years ago, I think, now. So I only have 2 left.
So unfortunately, I think it will get there. I think bots will essentially do marketing copy better than humans, because they've had a legacy of data to learn from, whether certain terms resonate with certain personas or segments better. I think the bots can cherry pick certain words better. I do think that is true. But stories, on the other hand, might be a whole different challenge, right? I think humans tell stories much better than any robot can. And really stories is what makes humans humans, right? It's the passing of stories which makes cultures. And stories is a much better way of communicating content than a data sheet.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to look up who said that quote, that humans are the animal that tells stories, the storytelling animal.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially as a content person, but just as a person, stories, absolutely it.
Yeah, stories is what has been part of our lives since we were born, right? Whether it's Little Red Riding Hood, West Side Story, whatever it is that we grew up with. I think one of marketers' greatest challenges is becoming better storytellers. I think as we struggle to find more creative ways of creating content and distributing that content, people forget that stories resonate with people. And so once marketers recognize that and that need to upskill their storytelling abilities, I think the better they are.
Okay, so finally, the question that we ask everybody is a very open-ended question, but what can marketers do to break free?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always believe that all marketers should have empathy. I think empathy is a super important value that we all need to possess, because we all talk about customer centricity. We need to be more customer centric, blah, blah, blah. But what drives customer centricity is empathy. And so I always try to train all of my marketers, especially the young ones who are just coming out of college and learning that they have to develop that empathy muscle. And actually, I do this little e-test in my workshops, and that is, I ask them to draw a capital E on their forehead, and then I watch them, and they struggle for a few seconds because they realize there's 2 ways they can draw that E. They could draw it where it's rightward facing for them, but backwards to the person facing them. Or it's the other way where it's backwards to them, but rightward facing for the partner. And I asked how many people in the room draw one way or the other. And it's usually a 50-50 mix. Sometimes I'm surprised, 80-20, drawing it the right way being that it's rightward facing for your partner. And so I call this the E-test for reasons, because the E stands for empathy, because you've taken the time to think about the other person and making sure they see it, the E, the right way. And so that's just a quick little parlor trick to show the importance of empathy in the world of marketing.
It sounds fantastic. I like the practice radical empathy is, I think, where we're at as marketers.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Data is the tool that helps us do that, and that's the only way to get people's attention and earn it.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Well, Kelvin, thank you so very much for being with us today. And where can people find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Just find me Kelvin Gee. I'm also on Twitter at KGEE.
Thanks very much again, and thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.